Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Candice and I help you understand and manage your ADHD brain. So today we're talking about ADHD and distractions. Why distractions? Because you asked me in my community post to talk about how I manage distractions at work, and I thought it was a great subject to talk about because I've been struggling with it in the past few days. And so it made me think and reflect on what actually distracts us at work and how can we manage those distractions in order to actually get work done. First of all, if you want to skip to any of the most interesting parts of the video, if your attention span is limited right now, then please do. I leave everything in the timestamps and it's quite detailed so you can find your way around the video. But if you want to watch it all from the beginning, then you can get started with me right now. So what is distractibility, ADHD, etc.? I'm not going to do a whole recap on this because I think if you're on this video, you probably have ADHD or you want to send that to someone who has ADHD. But basically, you know that ADHD is a combination, can be a combination of inattention, hyperactivity, impulsivity. And today we're tackling more of the inattentive side. So if you have a combined type or inattentive ADHD, you probably relate to this video. And we're talking about how at work, especially, distractions can distract us from the work we're trying to get done. And it can be really, really hard for someone who has ADHD and who doesn't really have the tools to deal with distractions. It can be really hard to do anything because we can really quickly get lost by, starting a task and then thinking about something that we want to do and then go and do that and then get distracted by something else and want to do something else. And then we can end up at the end of the day having done nothing or a lot of tasks that were not on our to-do list. So it's really useful to think about, okay, what are the actual distractions that happen at work and how can we deal with them? So in this video, I'll divide distractions into two categories. So external stimuli and internal stimuli. And I'll give you a two-step process to deal with distractions. So the first step will be emphasizing the importance of planning and having intentions for your day. And the second step will be how to detect and identify those distractions. And I'll give you a few tips and tricks for each of those kinds of distractions and what I do in my life that helps me a lot with distractions. If you're interested in that, let's get started. So as I mentioned, the first part, and I think that's a crucial one that we tend to forget sometimes when we have ADHD, is the planning and intention. What do I mean by setting intention? I mean that for someone who has ADHD, it's useful to identify a role and an objective for each part of your day. So I talk about this a lot in my video on time blocking, so I highly suggest you watch this one if you're interested in learning how to organize yourself at work or in your life in general. I've used time blocking for a while now and it has helped me so much getting organized and doing the things I really want to do and getting things done basically. So in time blocking, what I do is I basically block my day in several blocks of time, and the important stuff is not necessarily I need to do this task at this time, this task at this time, and respecting it perfectly. It's more like setting an intention for the day and setting an intention for each block of your day. And why is it useful? Is because in time blocking, what I do is I set all those intentions at the beginning of the day. And this is really important because when you have ADHD, you want to limit the number of times you have to think through and make decisions, because we can get into this analysis paralysis, mental paralysis that you probably know about if you have ADHD. And this is the thing that takes the most energy out of us. And if we have to do this like 6, 7, 8 times a day, when we have to choose, okay, what should I focus on next, and look at a task list and prioritize it as we go, then that's the most difficult thing to do for someone with ADHD. So setting an intention early in the day, and just once per day, you take 15-20 minutes and you try to map out your day and know exactly what you're going to do at what time. You don't need to be too granular at first if you're not used to this technique, but at least know that, okay, in the morning I'm going to work on admin, and then in the afternoon I'm going to go very deeply into work and think about my strategy for the next quarter or something. You know approximately what you're doing when, and that's the first step that I think is going to be really helpful. The second one is to distinguish, so in the planning and intention part, distinguishing the blocks of deep work, the blocks of work that you need to do uninterrupted, so in high focus, or at least not necessarily in high focus, but you don't want to be be interrupted. And then the work that can be done, and you can kind of let your imagination take on as well. You can kind of let the door open to people to come and see you, for distractions to come in. And I think it's useful to have some of those times during the day, because that's the time where you kind of let go, like your brain is free and you can still do tasks but be open to distractions. And I think you need to distinguish between those two kinds of work and where do you fit them during the day. And then when you know you have to do work that needs to be in focus mode and you don't want to be distracted, then you're going to take the measures that I'm going to give you right after this. You're going to take those solutions and put them into practice to avoid being distracted. So that's it for the first part. The second part of the process of managing distractions is identifying the kinds of distractions. So there are, as I said, external stimuli and there are internal stimuli. So external stimuli is anything that comes through your five senses. So smell, touch, taste, hearing, and sight. I kind of divided them that way because I think it's useful for each of them to have a few set of solutions or a few things that you always do. So when you want to get work done in a focused manner, in a deep work way, you can put these into actions and try to limit the chances of being distracted, if that makes sense. Because obviously you can't control what's in your environment. You can't really control all of it. You can control people, you can control noises and sounds from happening, but at least you can control some of your environment, and that's the key to limiting distractions. So if you're on site most of the time, which is not my case anymore, but I used to be, and I struggled a lot when I was on site because the distractions, I think, for me were like 10 times worse than at home. But if you're on site, the first thing, I think the two senses that are the most stimulated and can lead to distractions are sight and hearing. So sight is when you see your coworkers walk by and you're just trying to focus on something, but in the corner of your eye, you see someone walking or talking, or like you see stuff even though you're trying to get work done. Like I remember when I was at my desk, we were in a room of 4 or 5 people. There were always movement, people going to get coffee and stuff. Sometimes people passing by the door and saying hi. All of those little things could really like take me off task and into my thoughts, or just completely distract me in another direction, and I would start doing something else or talking to that person. My advice for those situations where you're in an open space or office with other people is to try to get the spot that has the least amount of passage and interactions, like stuff happening in front of you. So if you can be in front of the wall, that's the greatest spot you can find. If you can switch desk and go somewhere where you're less likely to see people and see stuff moving, anywhere that can be, find this spot and take this spot, because it's so important to not have a lot going around in your site. So that's the part about people moving, but there's also another part that's really, really, I think, the most important in our day-to-day life is notifications and stuff happening on our screens. So that's also very helpful to limit as much as possible the visual cues from happening. That can seem really simple of an advice, but even I struggle with that sometimes. I keep Slack open, and just seeing the icon of the thing makes me want to click on it. So I tend to close off all the apps, like interactive apps like Slack, Discord, anything like emails and stuff. I push that away. I try to keep my phone away from my site, because the most beautiful thing about ADHD is that out of sight equals out of mind, quite literally. So anything you put out of sight, you won't think about it during the time that you try to get work done. So push your phone away, your iPad, anything you can push away while you're getting work done, and keep the minimum on your laptop, and that will help a lot. So do those two things if you're on site, and do the same if you're at home, actually. The same about devices, same about looking at a wall. I don't know if you can see my desk behind me, but I'm facing the wall, so I just have a bit of art because I like, looking at something pleasant, but I don't see anything moving. It's quite satisfying to just be in the zone and have no one walk around. So that's the first one. The second one is hearing. Hearing can be one of the most distracting things as well. I remember hearing people laughing in the background and how much that frustrated me, because I kept getting distracted by this, and I felt like, how can other people stay focused with people just laughing and making jokes and making a lot of noise in the kitchen and stuff. I remember being really sensitive to that. And one thing, obviously, maybe you expect this advice, but obviously get some noise cancelling headphones, get something that cuts you out from the world around you. That's, I think, the most straightforward way to be in your bubble, make sure that no noise or no voices get to you while you're trying to get work done. So I think that's literally my most efficient way to avoid sound distractions. And another way would be also to be in a remote location in your office. If you can avoid being next to the kitchen, next to places where people interact, of course, that's going to be much better for you when you're trying to get deep work done, at least, because you can be in an open office and it's good to have conversations with people, have those period of time where you work freely, like you let your brain kind of daydream and you let people interact with you. That's great. But when you're trying to get actual work done, maybe find an office. If you have like free desk in your office space, find one that's more closed off, or like you can close the door literally so you have your own space and no one is disturbing you. I think that would be the ideal setup when you're on site and you're trying to get work done. The last three things, so taste is a bit of a weird one in terms of like being distracted. I don't think you would get distracted by anything you're tasting. I guess you're not really eating when you're working, but if you are, maybe just pay attention to the associations that can be made with like food or drinks. For example, when I drink a tea, it implies for me that I'm going to get into a deep work mode. So whenever I have this, it's like a cue for me to get into deep work mode. So drinks, food, it does have an impact on how you work and how you get work done, but I wouldn't have too much to say about distraction on that one. I guess the next one is taste, smell, hearing. Smell. I didn't talk about smell. Smell is kind of the same as taste. It's like we can be distracted by smell. If I smell like a sweet smell of chocolate, or a really good dish coming from the kitchen, or like coffee roasting, anything like that can actually take me off track. It's that simple. So I try to obviously stay away from communal areas, people cooking, people like having coffee and stuff. Don't cut yourself completely from the world and like pinch your nose like this. I don't think it's, necessary, but it can be, like, depending on how sensitive you are, maybe pay attention to that and stay away from smells. And the last one would be physical touch and just physical comfort overall. I think we are also quite sensitive to those things. So being at the right temperature, having a comfortable chair, being in the right position, a comfortable position. Right now, I'm in a very uncomfortable position, so that means I'm switching a lot and it's not comfortable. Anyways, yeah, pay attention to that, because I think this can definitely be a distraction. Like, you're getting really deep into your task and all of a sudden you feel your hip hurting, and then you start to shift in your chair, and then you start to think, oh, maybe I should buy another chair. And you ask someone in the office, oh, do you have another chair for me? And then you start switching and you completely forgot about your task. It's 25 minutes later and you just remember that you were doing that at first. So this can be also a distraction. Don't underestimate it, and make sure that your environment, in terms of what you sit on, what room you're in, the temperature, etc., make sure that this is optimal and that you are all set before starting to get work done. So that's basically the external stimuli. The 5 things, the 5 senses that I mentioned are all things that can come into play and be distractions for us to get work done with ADHD. So I would take care of that first and see the improvements from only that. But the second thing I think you're gonna relate to even more, and maybe that's the hardest to control, is the internal stimuli. And that comes from the thoughts, the emotions, and the sensations that basically pop up from nowhere, that are not caused by external stimuli. Why is it such a big issue for us? So some research has been done, and actually I would lead you to read ADHD 2.0, the book by Dr. Nat Hallowell. If you haven't read it, it's great. And in this book, he talks about 2 types of networks, and I'm not going to go into the details, but basically ADHD people have a glitchy switch between those 2 networks. And one of those networks, to summarize very, very briefly, allows us to stay on task, while the other one allows us to be more creative and daydream. And we tend to, when we're on task and we have this network for being on task, the network for daydreaming and creativity tends to force its way in, and we tend to switch a lot from one to the other without really wanting to. And this network, which is related to creativity, daydreaming, etc., is also related to rumination, negative thought. And so it tends to kind of come in without us noticing, and then we can start to completely veer off the actual task we're doing because we start thinking about a million things different than what we're supposed to do when we don't even notice it until we're trained enough to, be aware of our thoughts. And that's actually the first step I would tell you to do if you have those internal thoughts that ruin every task you try to implement because you think about, I should water my plants, I should do this and that instead of doing what you're actually doing. Then the first step you should do is actually pay attention to those thoughts and become aware of them, because sometimes we don't even realize we have left our bodies and kind of been daydreaming for 5 minutes. Sometimes we realize very late. And so I think training our awareness, and especially realizing how many thoughts are caused by one triggering thoughts at first, we think, oh, I haven't watered my plants. But instead of just this one thought and then coming back to the task, it becomes, oh, I haven't watered my plants. What is my partner gonna think? Why haven't, I should have done this, and then maybe my plants are gonna die, and then and we have all those negative thoughts coming after the first thought, and sometimes we just think, oh, it's one thought and I come back to the task, but it's actually shifting our mood because of the negativity. That's the second thing we need to be aware of, is how negative we are usually when we go into tangents in our mind. We tend to, beat ourselves up and we don't even realize it. So it does have a negative effect on the work we're trying to get done, because we need to be focused on a task, and instead we're thinking that we suck because we can't water our own plants. So first step, being aware of those thoughts. Notice them is already a great achievement. And once you notice them, the key second step is to let go of the resistance to those thoughts. So I feel like a lot of you, maybe I'm mistaken, but a lot of you want to fight distractions. Maybe some of you out there want to completely make distractions vanish and avoid daydreaming, completely avoid having those unwanted thoughts from happening. And I'm telling you, this is quite impossible because of the way our brain is made. So why don't we accept that this is going to happen and be gentle with ourselves when it happens? And I think that's the biggest thing that can make a difference, is accepting those thoughts, recognizing them, but then letting go of the resistance to those thoughts. So when I find myself trying to fill a form for my job, and then I realize I'm thinking about my YouTube channel, and I've been thinking about it probably for the last 5 minutes, instead of saying, oh my god, why are you still thinking about this, and then trying to actually figure out the YouTube thing while I'm doing the other task and having to choose between the two, I choose to be, I want to do that. I'm not doing that all the time, obviously, but ideally, I would recognize the thoughts, say, okay, it seems like I've been thinking about something else while I was trying to do this task. What is it that I'm thinking about? Great, okay, I let it go. And maybe it's not that easy to do, because sometimes we want to hold on to those things because we're scared we're going to forget them. And that's completely very understandable for someone who has ADHD, because we are forgetful in a way. And so if we think about something that's a really cool idea or a thought, something that we forgot to write down at some point, we need to write this down. And this is the third step, I think, to dealing with those unwanted thoughts or emotions, is to write it down. But write it down in a way that you just write it down so it's not lost in your memory, but you don't want to pay any more attention to it than you should. So it's you have a piece of paper on your desk. So let me show you mine actually. From yesterday, while I was writing the video, I had 3 distracting thoughts that I wrote down on this page. And one of them was thinking about creating a Notion website, or Notion templates. Let me know what you think in the comments. Notion templates for stuff that I want to, processes and solutions that I want to give you. One of the other ones was I can't even read what I wrote because I just wrote it down in a rush, and then I came back to the task. I wanted to have a cat. That's what I wrote down. I thought about having a cat. I thought about how sad it was that I wasn't allowed to have one from my contract. And then I thought about contacting someone who knows about ADHD, some scholar that I wanted to reach out to. So those 3 thoughts happened while I was scripting the video yesterday. And I tried the method that I'm preaching right now, and it did work quite well. Because I haven't been doing this for a while, let me tell you, it's quite new. But honestly, try it out. Keep a piece of paper on your desk, keep it somewhere nearby, and whenever you have this thought and you notice you've been daydreaming, then come back to the present moment, let it go, don't blame yourself, but just write it down somewhere, scribble, and then go back to the task. And if it's actually a task that you want to get done that you forgot. So for example, oh, I need to email my boss about this. Write a checkbox next to it. That's what I do if it's an actual task. And if it's just a random idea or like something I need to clarify, I'll just write down words. And it doesn't have to really make sense. As long as I know from the few words I write, I can tell what it was I was thinking about at the moment. That's pretty much it for the unwanted thoughts, the internal stimuli. I know that we struggle with that a lot, and I hope those tips were useful for you. So if I want to summarize what I said in this video, there are 2 steps to dealing with distractions at work. The first one, the really important one, is to plan and have an intention for every part of your day and distinguish between the times where you should get work done in a really focused, undistracted manner and the times where you can allow yourself to be distracted. And once you know when you're gonna have to be in a focus mode, then put everything into place with your environment and have a little notepad on the side for those internal thoughts that come up. So set up your environment like this to ensure you get the least chance of getting distracted and you maximize your chance of getting through the task. That's pretty much it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, leave a like on this video. That lets me know that the content resonates with you. Don't hesitate to leave a comment down below telling me what you liked, what you don't like, what you want to see next. That's really helpful as well. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel also if you haven't done so. I'll be posting a video every week, as I've been doing for the past few weeks. Actually, quite proud of myself. If you stick around on this channel, I'll see you in the next one. And thank you so much for watching again. Bye!